I'm Camilla Hellman, Executive Director of the Foreign Press Association Scholarship Fund. Our awardees are young journalists who are already demonstrating through their work and accomplishments to date the leading role they will be playing in reporting the news of tomorrow. And now I would like to ask David Michaels, President of the Foreign Press Association and Foreign Press Scholarship Fund, to say a few words. David.
Welcome and thank you all for joining us to celebrate the achievements of our 2016 Scholarship Award winners. The Foreign Press Association is the oldest association of its kind in the United States. When the United States entered World War I, President Wilson's press officers endeavored to gather the regular press representatives from the Allied countries in order to provide them with news of the American war effort. The journalists themselves called a meeting in mid-November 1917. I wasn't there. And for better contact with the federal government, formed an organization provisionally called, I have to take a breath now, the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents in the United States, .com. At its first official meeting in February 1918, it had only 11 members, 8 British, long live the Queen, 2 French, vive le champagne, and 1 Italian, and we thank them for everything. The Foreign Press Association grew rapidly, opened up a special section for stage and screenwriters, inaugurated its International Press Ball, and created the Foreign Press Awards, which in its day were said to be the Nobel Prize from the media industry, because the Foreign Press Association honored deserving individuals regardless of their politics, profession, nationality, religion, or industry. Honorees had included the likes of Albert Einstein, Tennessee Williams, Elizabeth Taylor, Henry Kissinger, Stanley Kramer, Walter Cronkite, David Lean, and William Averill Harriman, amongst many. By the way, and strictly off the record, there is an initiative under discussion now to actually bring back the Foreign Press Awards. In the 1960s, the status of the Foreign Press Corps in the US improved considerably. President John F. Kennedy, his press officer Pierre Salinger, and Edward R. Murrow, then director of the US Information Agency, parent of the Voice of America, were approached by the Foreign Press Association and asked to provide foreign correspondents with improved facilities. This initiative of the Foreign Press Association resulted in the opening of the Foreign Press Center in New York, in which President Kennedy took a personal pride. It was formally opened by Pierre Salinger in September 1961 and now has centers in Washington, D.C. and in Los Angeles, California, all managed now by the US Department of State. We are actually pleased to also welcome tonight the New York Foreign Press Center Director, Mr. Dale Prince. Where are you, Dale? You don't have to thank us for the job. Okay. Members of the Foreign Press Association are somehow twofold ambassadors. They bring their worlds to the United States and at the same time export their views on the United States and its citizens to readers and audiences in their own countries. The Foreign Press Association Scholarship Fund was established on the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Foreign Press Association and has been contributing to the development of the next generations of international reporters for more than 2 decades. Since its establishment, the FPA Scholarship Fund has helped 79 journalism students, complete their studies, launch and build on their journalism careers. However, the Scholarship Fund could not offer these awards without the enthusiastic support of the many companies, media organisations and individuals who have provided their financial and other support throughout the years. I wish to particularly thank our 2016 lead sponsors, Bayer, Bloomberg, Daimler and UPS for their generous support. With members from more than 50 countries, the Foreign Press Association offers orientation and networking opportunities, newsmaking and educational events, and a growing range of services and benefits that support our membership in the United States. There is no doubt that international journalism faces exceptional opportunities and continuous challenges. Sharing information and perspective from around the world has never been easier from a technical point of view. But professional journalists are becoming an endangered species through intimidation, frivolous litigation, imprisonment, and assassination. In an interconnected world, international issues and stories have never been more important, and the role of the international journalist to help people make sense of the world is as relevant today as it was nearly 100 years ago when the Foreign Press Association was founded. Notwithstanding its traditional role, if the Foreign Press Association is to survive another 100 years, it must constantly change to reflect both the realities of the media industry and the needs of its members. Change does not please all, and I confess has been resisted by a small minority of members. However, we must be doing something right. During this past year, we have received more applications for new membership than at any time in our history of record keeping. In this context, we believe that the Foreign Press Association must continue its important role of supporting the foreign press in the United States, along with future generations of international journalists through our Scholarship Fund Awards. As you listen to the stories of the 5 young journalists we are honouring tonight, I ask you to think about the role of international journalism and how you can help us support development of the next generations of international reporters who will do so much to bring clarity and insight to an even more complex world. Please join me in thanking our Scholarship Award judges, Nancy Camel, Elaine Walsh, Laura Thompson, and Simon Locke. A special thank you to Camilla Hellman, Executive Director of the FPA Scholarship Fund, for planning and organising tonight's event, and Tony Morenzi, Executive Director of the Foreign Press Association, for his additional support. And now, one of the highlights of the evening. I will stop speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The Foreign Press Association, as David mentioned, was created the FPA Scholarship Fund on its 75th anniversary, 23 years ago. This evening we will add another 5 names to the Foreign Press Association Scholarship Award alumni. We look forward to growing upon the past work of the fund, increasing the Scholarship Fund program, student membership outreach, and a program of workshops, panel discussions between journalists and international graduate students. This year we received an increased number of submissions representing a greater number of journalism schools across the United States. Applicants had to answer the following question put to them. The 2016 presidential election cycle has been largely defined by non-traditional candidates from outside the Washington mainstream. How important a role has the media played in the rise of these candidates in the US? And how much has the international coverage of these political figures shaped perception of the US election process in your home country? The winning op-eds will be available on the Foreign Press Association website this evening. We encourage you to read them. They're fascinating. And so this evening, we are presenting 4 awards in the written op-ed and 1, as we say, in the multimedia. And now, our first award, which is a joint third place award for $2,500, is to Dean Long. An investigative journalist from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, covering politics, inequality and globalization, Din has just completed his Master of Science degree at Columbia School of Journalism as a recipient of a Fulbright scholarship. His work has appeared in leading publications such as The Guardian, Al Jazeera, and The Diplomat. Before coming to Columbia, Din was a reporter and deputy editor, bringing us hard-hitting stories showing the other side of Vietnam's development, a development that has left millions of poor Vietnamese people behind. And may I now ask Dean Sotomayor, Dean of Student Affairs and Director of Latin American Initiatives at Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism, to introduce Dean Long.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you, Michael. And to the Foreign Press Association. We had our graduation yesterday, more than a century after we started our school, and our Dean, Steve Call, talked about the much celebrated foreign corresponding work that he's done, of course, but he made reference to the richness that the international students at our school and the international diversity of our student body provides to the world of journalism. That is, of course, an understatement, and you will see why after hearing from the 5 students tonight, why that is so important to continue. They come to us from 40 nations every year. You'll hear from 5 of them, and you will be very proud, and I'm very honored to introduce to you 3 of them. Dean Long, who graduated yesterday from our Master of Science program, as Camilla said, came to us from Ho Chi Minh. He'd worked at a newspaper as an investigative reporter. We would sit here all night long to review all of the things that he'd worked at and the papers that he had contributed to. But it's amazing how much of a grasp on American politics that he has been able to have, despite not having worked in the United States before. In his winning essay, which you'll read later on, he said, "In Vietnam, where an overwhelming majority, admittedly, does not even know what the primaries are, the media spotlight on controversial outsiders has delivered an ironical and unexpected message. In a country where ordinary people often look to the United States as a role model for democracy, the rising profile of Donald Trump is, for many, emblematic of a system that gives voters and fringe candidates a fair tilt, unlike in their countries." And he finishes by saying, "Many in Vietnam feel that the prospect of Trump becoming the next president of the United States is not a grim picture like the Western media is pretending. Trump's hostile rhetoric toward Muslims, Mexico, and China has not affected his profile in Vietnam. Muslim-related issues are barely on the radar there. Mexico is too far away, and the historic antagonism against China fuels the perception that anything that can hurt the giant to the north can only be good. It is in this context that a majority of the Vietnamese masses, unsurprisingly, remain in awe of the system that is rapidly becoming dysfunctional." His boss at the newspaper talked about the work that he had done and what he said briefly in the letter that he sent to us, read in part. Since he had started working with us, he had provided us with a long list of enlightening and investigative stories on unexplored ordnance in Vietnam, wildlife issues ranging from the bear bile trade to the near extinction of rhinos and elephants in Vietnam, environmental issues exposing multinational corporations destroying Vietnam's rivers and secret untreated wastewater plants. His commitment to that kind of reporting continued in his master's project, which he may talk to you about, and he was on Agent Orange. It was a fantastic story, and hope to see the light of day very soon. Please hear from him now. Thank you very much, Dan, for that wonderful report.
Thank you. Good evening. In one's life, there are always moments that don't make any sense. For me, this is one of those moments. When I got admitted to Columbia School last year, I didn't know why I was able to do so. And today, when I'm up here today, I still don't know how I get it. But here is what I know. Next Monday, President Barack Obama is coming to Vietnam. And over the past week, as you might be aware, much has been written about the visit in the New York Times, the journal, and unless I'm missing something, there have been at least 3 stories about the visit in the New York Times. Why does the Times care about that visit? Why do they care about Vietnam? So I think it's safe to assume that because their well-informed readers care, it's because their well-educated readers care. But I do think those well-informed and educated readers would be much more interested in reading stories about Vietnam. The stories that are written by Vietnamese with the Vietnamese viewpoints. So it is in that context that I strongly believe that given my experience at Columbia and my experience in Vietnam, that makes me one of the few people that can work on those stories. And thanks to the generous scholarship and the generous support by the Foreign Press Association and by the contacts I'm going to make with my brilliant peers here after this event, I'm very ready to come back to Vietnam to take on the stories that international news organizations are looking for. I would like to spend the last few minutes to speak about my master project that my dean has mentioned. The master project is just the master thesis version at my J school. The story is mainly about how Monsanto company, the company that produced Agent Orange, the toxic defoliant used during the Vietnam War, and they were able to come back to Vietnam to sell GMOs. The story delved into the intense lobbying efforts the company has mounted to sell GMOs and about how the US government have to reach the will. And the story is going to appear soon in The Guardian in the next few days. And before it came out, I was a little bit nervous because I was thinking that the story might upset my generous benefactor that make my study at Columbia possible. That is the State Department who gave me the Fulbright scholarship. But then I realized that I was being paranoid because what I have been doing is exactly what the US government is advocating for. That is freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and honest and impartial journalism. So I look forward to reading the story when it comes out, and I think the State Department is looking forward to it too. So that's why I do think I need to leave this country very soon. Actually, my flight is scheduled for next Monday. Just kidding. Seriously, I think the fact that my story about Monsanto and about the Vietnam-US relations as a whole is a testament to the fact that at the time we are living in a world of doubt and insecurity about journalism, I hope that my story would be able to prove that the integrity of journalism would never be compromised. And at the time that journalism has become so, in decline in terms of everything, thanks so much for your generous support, your continue believe in us. Please continue to do so. We won't let you down. Thank you. Thank you.
A freelance journalist working for selected media organisations covering health, development and business issues. Jennifer, in 2014, launched Rural Reporters, a news portal focused on amplifying underreported issues in rural Africa. And now may I ask Dean Sotomayor to return and to introduce her. Thank you.
When Jennifer Hediaman came to us from Lagos, in Nigeria, to study the Master of Arts in Business and Economics program, what arrived really was a very seasoned and practicing journalist, but she was also a leader in her field. As you heard, she graduated from the Nigerian Institute of Journalism and then proceeded to found the Rural Reporters website, which she will continue to develop when she returns to Nigeria. She's written in a lot of other places as well, but she's done a lot of training of journalists, and she hopes to continue to do that when she returns. She's taken her commitment to excellence much further in her work at Columbia, and she can talk to you more about some of that. She's really a poet. She's a book author. She's an academic researcher. She's a teacher. She's a blogger. She's a publisher. And that's just in the early years of this young woman's profession. From Columbia, going forward, her intent is to continue developing media in Nigeria to improve, to have more impact and reach more people. In her op-ed piece she submitted, she assessed the coverage of America's presidential race that is available to Nigerians in this way. Until now, I must admit that the coverage of the U.S. elections in Nigeria has been underwhelming. Reports about international politics and manifestos that presidential candidates base their campaigns on are left for columnists to analyze. There's no in-depth coverage about trends, events, or reactions in the mainstream news. And she continued, most of the news coverage about Trump does not focus on his manifestos or views on international policies and how it affects Nigeria or the African region. Instead, for the most part, the reports analyze his campaign speeches and reactions to his supporters on the campaign trail. Unfortunately, some of those reports are often turned into skits and memes. Readers do not fact-check them, and they consume it all, hook, line, and sinkers. I think the Nigerians are not alone in that. In applying to Columbia, she wrote of her ambitions, and from what we have seen from her strong showing this year, they were entirely realistic. She told us, people often say journalism is a noble profession which is not financially empowering, although I have been tempted a few times to branch off into corporate communications and related jobs. I have always found myself coming back to embrace this profession. Journalism to me is more than a profession, it is a calling. 10 years from now, I envision myself as a fully established journalist managing one of the most innovative media companies in Nigeria. I believe that Jennifer has arrived. Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited, and I really want to thank the Foreign Press Association for this opportunity and for this award. Thank you so much. In 2014, I was a little bit exhausted. As Dean mentioned, I was in the middle of deciding how to move on with my career. That was one of the things that led me to Columbia University's website to seek for a course that would help me sharpen my skills in the area of academic learning. People tell me that I'm very lucky because I studied business and economics in Columbia University. As they say, it's that area in journalism that has not yet been swallowed up by social media and new technology. As you all know, technology and social media is changing the way news is produced and consumed. In Nigeria, where I come from, power has been taken away or is being taken away from traditional media. A lot of ordinary citizens now report and disseminate news. Sometimes they just mostly copy and paste this news content from what the traditional media already has out there. With mobile phone penetration increasing in Nigeria, as well as internet access, more and more people have become very proactive in breaking news, even way before traditional media break this news. In one of the courses I took at Columbia University School of Journalism, it was the 21st century news management. We looked at how the different dynamics in news management, as well as how technology is reshaping the news organizations in the US. One of the assignments we were given, I focused on trying to tailor what we learned in the classroom to the situation in Nigeria. And I found out that while in the US, most news organizations are already talking about virtual realities and live streaming and using different applications to amplify the news, in Nigeria, we're still just mostly focusing on launching websites and using Twitter and social media to disseminate news. I think I see this as a challenge because the future of journalism, as we were told yesterday during our commencement, is going fully into digital. So news media organizations who only limit themselves to just the traditional style will soon be extinct. I'm hoping as a journalist and as a media trainer to go back to Nigeria, not only to report the business and economic news there, but also to focus on how I can contribute my quota in ensuring that the innovations and the different trends are being replicated in Nigeria as well as the African region. Again, I would like to really thank you all for this opportunity. And I look forward to contributing my quota to sustaining the profession so we don't all lose our jobs. Thank you.
Our second place written op-ed award is to Roberto Capocelli, who receives a Foreign Press Scholarship of $5,000. Roberto is a master's candidate at CUNY Graduate School of Journalism in New York and a Fulbright Scholar. Roberto graduated in 2005 with a master's degree in communications from La Sapienza University in Rome, having begun his freelance career in 2002 visiting the West Bank and Gaza during the Second Uprising. He continued his postgraduate studies in journalism, traveling and working in Egypt, Lebanon, UK, and Colombia. On returning in 2002 to Italy, he joined Avanti, covering Italian politics. He's received several awards in the past 2 years, most notably being selected to attend the video journalism school La République and being awarded a Fulbright Scholarship to attend CUNY. And now, may I ask Dean Bartlett, Dean of CUNY Graduate School of Journalism at the City of New York University, to introduce and tell us more of Roberto Capocelli.
Well, when I was asked to introduce Roberto Capocelli, I said, sure, how hard could that be, right? And then I reread the application that he wrote to our school, and I realized, oh my God, I have my work really cut out for me. Where to begin? Roberto has worked not just for one NGO, but for 3 NGOs. He was in a refugee camp on the West Bank. He worked with human rights defenders in the jungles of Colombia. And he was a media assistant with an anti-poverty charity in London. He's been a reporter with Swiss TV, a videographer in Egypt, a writer and editor in Rome, and a press officer for a member of the Italian Parliament, and a public information officer for a UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He speaks 4 languages fluently: Italian, his mother tongue, English, Spanish, and French. And he's currently working on his, wait for it, 3rd master's degree. He apparently did not feel that the 2 he earned in Italy, one in communication studies and one in forensic science, that was clearly not enough. I'm sure I've left something out, but this gives you an idea of the powerhouse who arrived at our school last summer and whose energy and passion for journalism is truly infectious. The first sentence of Roberto's application essay began this way: what makes the thing that I'm doing worth being done? A simple yet fundamental question that I ask myself every day has been the key to achieving my goals in life. Well, Roberto, keep asking that question. You're off to an amazing start. Come on up.
Well, good evening, everybody. So, obviously, for me, it's an honor to be here tonight and to receive this scholarship. I want to thank the Foreign Press Association for this award, the Dean, Sarah Bartlett, for her remarks, amazing remarks, thank you. CUNY staff and fellow students for their support. Camilla is here tonight, she's a fellow student from CUNY. The Fulbright program and the Fulbright Commission in Italy for sponsoring my studies here in the United States. Before coming to New York City, I was working as a political journalist in Italy, and I feel privileged to be in the US in such an interesting moment. To be honest, I can tell you that somehow this presidential race that we are all living has some element that sounds familiar to me. I feel a sort of a deja vu. I'll let you guess why. In politics, as well as in journalism, well-settled rules are changing very, very quickly. And David, I promise I didn't copy your speech. This is not news that things are changing very, very quickly. We all know this. As usual, when change comes about, there are incredible opportunities on the one hand and also terrible risks on the other. As journalists, our task is to describe and analyze reality unfolding in front of us. And this is a hard duty in times of confusion and transformation, as the one we are all living. Telling a story is somehow a way to organize the events in a meaningful structure. It's a way to give sense and order to what's going on in front of our eyes. It's a way to create cohesion and community. The way we tell a story can be the compass that helps to navigate the chaos. But narrative is generated first and foremost by the audience itself sometimes, often. And this is where the challenge is. Connecting to different audiences, they are more and more fragmented. For better or for worse, for a long time the press has played the role that used to be that of the agora, the place for the debate that shaped the civic and the public life. Now this space has shifted in ways that are still to be understood. There's a new frontier out there, and I'm sure that my studies at CUNY are making me better equipped to face it. This is why I want to take the opportunity again to thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks.
And our first place written op-ed award is to Alexander Gorbachev, who receives the Foreign Press Scholarship Award of $10,000. Alexander Gorbachev is a Russian journalist and Fulbright Fellow at the Missouri School of Journalism, a member of the first post-Soviet Russian generation and the leading Russian music journalist. Alexander's focus has gradually shifted from cultural subjects to social issues and the troubling times of Vladimir Putin's second reign. In 2014, Alexander left Fisher, became a fellow at Fulbright program, and enrolled at the University of Missouri School of Journalism to get his master's degree. The Dean of Missouri School of Journalism was not able to join us tonight, arranging for former Missouri alumni Barney Kalami to introduce Alexander Gorbachev. Mr. Kalami is one of journalism's most respected editors. He dedicated himself to ethical journalism and to putting the reader first during the 39-year career at the Wall Street Journal and 2-year term as public editor and ombudsman for the New York Times. Mr. Kalami joined the journal in 1965 as a reporter and in 1992 became deputy managing editor responsible for quality control and upholding ethical standards. As the readers' representative at the Times, he had the responsibility for making sure their concerns were heard and publicly assessing the paper's journalistic integrity. Mr. Kalami, thank you for joining us this evening, and may I now ask you to introduce Alexander.
Thank you, Camilla. I'm honored to introduce Alexander Gorbachev, as you've heard, a Russian journalist and Fulbright Fellow at the Missouri School of Journalism. He graduated this year after defending a thesis on business models of American digital long-form publications. Among the writing samples that Alexander submitted for this scholarship award is one he wrote in the advanced writing class taught by Associate Professor Paige Williams, who also chaired his thesis committee. Williams is also a staff writer for The New Yorker and a 2015 McDowell Fellow. As Camilla said, a member of the first post-Soviet Russian generation, Alexander became interested in writing and in understanding the world through narrative at an early age. He had already composed poems dedicated to Russian political leaders by the time he was 10 years old. By his own admission, however, these poems were rather atrocious. Before graduating from the Russian State University for the Humanities in the mid-2000s with degrees in Russian literature and French, he became an active music blogger. He was eventually hired by the leading Russian arts and culture magazine, FPA, as a staff music writer. He spent 9 years working for the publication, eventually working his way from being a contributor to being the editor-in-chief and becoming the leading Russian music critic. He launched the biggest Russian music webzine, Volna. He curated club residences, labels, and festivals, and he helped a new generation of Russian independent bands to evolve and establish themselves. Over the years, Alexander talked to and wrote about hundreds of musicians and bands, both Russian and foreign, including artists such as Patti Smith, Robert Smith of The Cure, and many others. While at FPA, Alexander's journalistic focus gradually shifted from cultural subjects to social issues. As an editor, he helped to create several issues of the magazine that were particularly resonant in the turbulent and troubling times of Vladimir Putin's second reign, be it issues dedicated to the life of the Russian LGBT community or to the Pussy Riot trial. As a reporter, he interviewed the leaders of Russian opposition, investigated the infamous government-sponsored educational camp Seliger, and went on tour with the protest rapper Noise MC. In 2014, feeling the need to further broaden his professional perspective and sharpen his journalistic skills, Alexander decided to leave his position at FPA. He became a fellow of the Fulbright program and came to the world's first school of journalism, the Missouri School of Journalism, to get his master's degree. In the summer of 2015, he also won the Muskie internship program and spent 3 months as an editorial intern at Newsweek, writing stories for the magazine and its digital version. Tomorrow, Alexander returns to Russia, where he hopes to start working in the field of long-form narrative journalism, both in Russian and English languages, applying the skills he learned at the Missouri School of Journalism for the benefit of the Russian media. Congratulations, Alexander, and please come up.
Thank you so much. And I first would like to answer a question that 95% of people I met here already asked me. I'm not related to Mikhail Gorbachev. It's actually not an uncommon Ukrainian last name, but thank you for asking. And thank you very much. I thank Foreign Press Association for this award that was unexpected and really, really overwhelming. And yeah, I'm honored and humbled by it. 2 years ago, I came to the University of Missouri to get a master's degree in journalism as a Fulbright fellow. Before that, I have never ever written a news story or, quite frankly, anything in English. I have never worked in a newspaper before. I was used to writing about musicians and artists and social phenomena for a bi-weekly magazine in Russian. And during my second week in my school, I came to the newsroom of a student newspaper at 8 a.m. and was immediately asked to write a story about a heavy rainstorm that hit the city of Columbia, Missouri the night before. That was really unexpected and hard. They called it the Missouri method. You know, Putin won just in the middle of journalistic action, and considering that I'm now standing here, I guess the method worked. So first of all, I would like to thank all my teachers and professors at the University of Missouri and all my friends and relatives and family who really helped me to get through these 2 years that were really enlightening and entertaining and tough, but extremely valuable. I'm not sure I would have been able to do that if it was not for them. I will just mention a couple of points regarding my op-ed. The name of Donald Trump has been spoken already, a lot of times, and but I would like to underline the fact that, you know, as frustrating and distasteful this presidential campaign might seem to many of you here, it is still a real political process, and coming from a country that doesn't have this thing, I can assure you that, in a sense, you're actually quite lucky that people actually go to the election and vote, and their vote actually matters to a certain extent. Of course, there are a lot of things around it, but still. And not many things have ever been as interesting to follow for me as a journalist and as a person as this campaign, even though I must admit it's probably more enjoyable for somebody who, like me, is not a citizen of this country and won't have to deal with the consequences of what happens in November. Then again, I would like to just mention a couple of points regarding Donald Trump that I made in my op-ed. And this is about Donald Trump because no other political figure fascinates and disgusts the media as him. At the same time, I have read a lot of articles and stories that said that, you know, the media has not scrutinized Donald Trump enough. They haven't been tough enough on him. I actually beg to disagree. I think that the scrutiny, has been really, really tough of him, and as far as I know, every episode of his career has been scrutinized. But the thing is, it hasn't had any impact on his rating, and I think that might be because the media rarely try to look not at the candidate himself, but at the people who think of him as their representative. You know, millions of Americans voted for Trump by now, but as we read thousands and thousands of words about the Trump phenomenon itself, we really hear the real voices of his supporters. And when we do, most of the times, at least as far as I have noted, the coverage of these people is somewhat condescending, you know, implying that they are very ignorant or racist or arrogant or xenophobe. It might be so, but it is no wonder that these people perceive the media as their personal enemy, adding to the spiral of distrust and anger. So, whereas by no means I support Trump's agenda, obviously, since I'm here, I still think that the only way to establish a truly fair society is to talk to each other, not to alienate each other. And this is the role of the media, too. And I might recall one example from the Russian recent history. In 1996, we had kind of, well, it wasn't the same, of course, but it was kind of similar to today's premise. We had this communist candidate, which all the liberal media, and that's all we had actually by then, because, you know, all the Soviet media dissolved themselves, and there were only these new type of media. They basically consciously conspired against this new candidate that was, left-wing communist and that promised to bring back the Soviet Union, and nobody wanted that, of course. And they vilified and disparaged this guy, thinking that they were actually helping the nascent Russian democracy to survive. And they succeeded, and the Russian first president, Boris Yeltsin, was re-elected for the second term, but in the long-term perspective they failed, because when the government of Russia saw that, what it can do when it controls the media, the TV stations, the newspapers, the radio stations, it started putting all the media under its own control, and eventually it led to the situation that we have now that, as you probably know, is not very great, at least for the media. And I'm sure that you don't want it to happen here, and I think that, as much as we or you might disagree with people who vote for Trump, it's still important to listen to their voices and to have the media to not promote, but to reflect their voices. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
The multimedia op-ed is a changing voice of journalism and is emerging as the leading form of reporting today. Shahar is a multimedia journalist from Israel, covering culture, technology, and politics, recent graduate of Columbia University School of Journalism MA program for professional journalists. During her time in New York, she has reported for Metropolis, Time Out, and continued working for Israel-based I-24 News. I would now like Dean Sotomayor to return to us and introduce Shahar and her spirited op-ed.
The Master of Arts in Arts and Culture program at Columbia has had students who came to learn a very great range of topics under this broad genre: architecture, music, dance, theater, photography, literature, urban planning, food, and many more topics. Shahar Peled, who came to Columbia Journalism School as a television news journalist in Tel Aviv, had just as broad a range of experiences, from the coverage of Pope Francis' visit to Israel, to a profile of an Iranian filmmaker, interviews with world leaders, daily breaking news, and hosting special broadcasts when events warranted them. Following her stint in the Israeli military, she turned intensely to her education, and as a student began hitting her stride as a journalist, writing investigative pieces about the environment, education, public affairs, culture, and eventually joining Israel's Meet the Press program following graduation. Actually, Shahar's affinity for the arts dates back to her childhood, when she told us she envisioned a career as a Broadway performer. In recent years as a journalist, she has closely examined issues like the role of women in cinema, how art can bridge differences between people with very different cultures, and the importance of theater for Arab children. In her time at Columbia, she continued to look at how culture and social issues are closely interwoven, with a master's thesis that looked at how the nation's homeless population uses technology like mobile phones to build community among themselves using social media and other platforms.
Gradually begin to follow the US election process. As the initial shockwaves of Trump's rise will fade, the tiny state will attentively look forward to see what comes next for her big Western ally, witnessing it make history one way or another.
Shair, will you join us?
Two smiles. One more.
He gets in all the shots.
It's okay. It's allowed. And one more. Thank you.
I'm honored and delighted to be the first winner of the Foreign Press Association Award in the multimedia category. The fact that there is a multimedia category now is a distinctive sign of where journalism is headed and the importance of merging platforms to tell a whole, more complete story. As a reporter covering culture, technology, politics, and society, I've learned the importance of amplifying unheard voices and highlighting those who are usually far away from the spotlight. Homeless mothers, detained refugees, women in traditional societies who wish to work or become elected politicians but are unable to do so, even in democratic countries sometimes. After focusing my reporting in the Middle East and my home country of Israel for the past 7 years, I'm grateful to the Columbia Journalism School, which has opened the door for me to a new media landscape. With coursework in data journalism and workshops in its Media Innovation Center, the school is growing and progressing in its media to the new realms of journalism and passing on this skill to its students. It is also a very international school with graduates from dozens of countries. Knowing I now have colleagues I can call dear friends in Brazil, Colombia, Australia, and Ghana really places me in an incredible position in a globalized world. Just a glimpse at the Panama Papers investigation provides a mesmerizing example of what truly global collaborations can achieve. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Foreign Press Association, first and foremost for allowing me to join the Donald Trump train. For the past several weeks and months, it has become impossible to avoid funny videos and analytical essays, investigations, and hundreds of memes, inviting us to provide insight into the role media plays in the American election and how this is reflected in our home countries was a great opportunity to explore the seriousness and silliness of what is currently taking place, and how awareness to the process should inform everyone regardless their nationality. What happens at the end of this year in the United States will be historic either way, and it is important to examine how it is already affecting both America and the world. On a final note, an issue close to my heart. According to the latest report of the Women's Media Center, in 2015, men still dominated the media. Women are 51% of the population, but hardly equal partners in telling the story, the report states, showing just a 1.3% overall increase in female bylines and other credits from the previous year. I wish for myself and my fellow journalists, both male and female, to be witnesses and also part of the shift to real equality when both quantity and acknowledgement will prevail. This award will... And I think this award will allow me to be in the newsroom when it happens and continue to shed light on stories at the intersection of society, technology, and politics, how they all impact each other and our lives.